Welcome to Keen on Retirement, a show dedicated to helping you thrive before and during your retirement years. If you are looking to grow and protect your wealth and want to make the second half of your life the best half, then listen in as Wealth Advisor Bill Keen sorts through the key issues that you need to know in a lively and candid way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Keen on Retirement. I'm your co-host, Steve Sandusky, and with me, as always, is Bill Keen and Matt Wilson. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Well, we're doing good here in sunny May in Kansas City, Steve. Ready for the summer to come our way. How about you?
Yeah, ready as well, and so looking forward to it. Our second summer here out in Oregon, coming off of the rainy, foggy season here over the winter, so the sun is definitely out.
Very nice. And I know you get out and you enjoy the outdoors out there, don't you? That's what part of why you're out there on top of having family there. But you do get out and hit the hiking and take advantage of the terrain, I think, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Yep, definitely. So my favorite hiking trail here near the house is just about a 12-minute walk from my front door, and I'm on the trailhead. So yeah, it's pretty nice.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right.
Very good. Well, we're excited today to talk about our topic that so many of our listeners and clients and viewers asking about a lot. So looking forward to it.
Yes, Social Security. And it's something that's been in the news. I would say this is perennially in the news because there's always a point in time where people are talking about how it's going to go bankrupt and they're going to have to cut benefits and this, that, and the other thing. There's a lot of fear mongering out there. And we thought we would do an episode on that because there was a recent Wall Street Journal article titled, "Americans Are Claiming Social Security Early, Fearful of Its Future." And it says, waiting to start drawing benefits typically leads to a bigger monthly check, but many don't want to wait right now. So I think we have more fear mongering going on about the safety of Social Security and whether we're going to get the benefits that we were promised or whether benefits are going to be cut. So let's dig into that. Let's try and separate the fact from the fiction here, and let's hopefully put people's minds at rest over what we think will actually happen with Social Security.
Yeah, this article, I saw this article towards the end of April. And in the client meetings that I had been sitting in through since the beginning of the year, it has been a common concern among our clients, ones that are on Social Security and have been on Social Security, worried about, hey, is it going to be there? Others that haven't claimed it yet, thinking, well, should we just start it? Is it better to just get something? A very, very valid concern. And I think, it reflects, the concerns reflect I would say the inability for Congress to actually do anything about it until they are absolutely forced to. I mean, that's, I think, what's driving a lot of it. I mean, yes, there's the new administration and there's, they're cutting staff and Social Security staff and thinking, well, they're claiming that there's all of this fraud. And I think in this article, it references that 0.3% of Social Security payments, according to the Social Security Administration, are potentially fraudulent. So it's not nothing when that's a large dollar amount, but it's not rampant across the board. But people are concerned about it, and they're concerned that it's going to run out sooner maybe than expected. And what's going to happen? Again, Congress has known about this. We've been talking about it seems like ever since I've actually been in this industry for nearly 25 years, Social Security and is it going to be there or not, and how that's all going to work. And there hasn't necessarily been a ton of changes over the years. So yeah, definitely some things will be changing in the future. No reason to think it won't. It's just, what would those changes be and how will that impact our clients?
So let's take a look at claiming early, delaying your claiming. What are the pros and cons of that? What do the numbers actually show here?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the basics for Social Security. So you have what is called your full retirement age. So that is the age when you qualify for 100% of your benefit. That used to be age 65 for everybody, and then they've slowly increased it to age 67. And the reason that's important because that also determines whatever your full retirement age, it determines if you claim early, how much of a discount you receive, and if you delay it, how much of an increase do you receive. So full retirement age, when your full retirement age is age 67, you can claim it as early as age 62. It doesn't matter when your full retirement age, whether it's 65 or 66 or whatever it is. You can always start at age 62, but it's discounted 30% if you start it at age 62. And if you wait until age 70, it increases 24%. So it's about 8% per year. It's simple. It's not a compounded, 8%. So you can kind of see the range there. 70% of your full retirement benefit at age 62 up to 124% at age 70. So that's quite a range. And the math would indicate that maybe you should delay. That's a very common planning strategy for us as financial planners, is to talk with clients about delaying Social Security. But that is not a one size fits all strategy for everyone. I think sometimes it gets presented that way, that everyone should delay, but there's just too many circumstances, individual circumstances, to where delaying isn't necessarily the best strategy. So reasons people would claim it early: they might have a health issue and a reduced life expectancy, because the math, when we look at the math, and you can put spreadsheets together, there's online tools, we have tools that we utilize. It's all based on how long you're going to live. So if we knew the date of death, we could determine exactly the best Social Security strategy that you should choose. But since we don't know that, now we have to factor in some just some educated guesses on what those things are. So a reduced life expectancy is definitely going to factor into when you should claim it. And, really, if you're unlikely to live until your 80s, early 80s, then claiming it sooner than later may be your best bet. And again, if someone is 62 and sitting down with us, we could plug in exactly what their benefit is, and let's just pick age 80 as your estimated date of death. And all right, you got 18 years. What's that amount going to be? What if you delayed it to 63, 64? I mean, we can just keep doing all the different scenarios and coming up with different numbers, because you do get increased amounts. You receive a higher benefit when you wait too. So there's, there's a little bit of a benefit to waiting, just may not make up for the less payments that you might receive. Other reasons people would take it early would be, well, they need the income. If you have retired, or maybe you've been downsized and you're not having a whole lot of prospects and you're eligible for Social Security and you may not have a whole lot of retirement savings, that might be just the best choice for you. And definitely nothing wrong with that they allow people to claim it at age, again, at age 62. If you're concerned about Social Security's future, I mean, that is a reason to take it. It's we'll talk through some of the numbers around that, but no one knows what the future of Social Security is going to be. We feel it's highly unlikely that the benefits for current retirees and folks that are within, I would say within the next 10, 15 years of receiving Social Security, they're probably not going to make significant changes and, really reduce people's benefits significantly, because it is a very hot topic that gets a lot of coverage in the media when it is discussed in Congress. Another reason that we have people they really think about claiming it early, if they want to leave if it's really important for them to leave a legacy or a an inheritance to their beneficiaries.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about that, it's like, okay, we're going to not live on our assets, or at least reduce the amount we're taking from our asset base, and we're going to live off, more from the Social Security, and preserve that asset base. That's the objective for our beneficiaries. Definitely, again, nothing wrong with that. Life insurance could be an option too, depending on your age and your health status. If someone really is adamant about leaving an inheritance, there's ways with life insurance to make that happen. It can be expensive, but again, other ways to look at that. And then sometimes when you have two spouses and one of them's a lower earner relative to the higher earner, the lower earner might claim it early and the higher earner delays it. And that might, the benefit of that is the survivor benefit for the lower earner would be, would be higher in the situation where the higher earner passed away. Because what happens when, a married couple, one of the spouses pass away, the surviving spouse receives the higher of the two benefits. That's how, how the Social Security Administration looks at it.
So those are reasons why someone would take it earlier than full retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you laid those out, I mean, I know you did mention concerns about Social Security's future, and which is kind of what sparked us to do this episode today, because with and like in any time, like you said, this is a hot topic. Any type of political environment we're in, it's always a hot topic. But what we don't want folks doing is making brash decisions on things they can't reverse for the most part, based on fear and headlines. And I saw there in that article that you mentioned and some other places that calls were up into the Social Security Administration over in a previous month, almost 20% year over year than where they were back in 24. And I saw, I think in that same month, there were 550,000 people applied for Social Security benefits, while in the prior year it was only 500,000. So I guess you'd call that about 10% more.
Yeah.
So there are real people, if there's a correlation, which it seems like there might be, to the kind of the headlines, actually taking action on those headlines. And maybe it's not exactly correlated, but the I think the spurring of this article was that. So we've talked about why take it early. What would then, Matt, be reasons? And you did a great job, by the way. Thank you for making it easy on Steve and I. What would be reasons to wait to 70 for our listeners to think about and ponder? Again, taking the headlines out of it and just saying what are legitimate reasons to wait until 70 now.
Yeah. When we do the analysis on it, again, we do have to choose a date of death, and we typically start in the early 90s, and then we talk to our clients about that, and just, hey, how are you feeling about that? What is longevity in your family? And let's just, again, let's talk through this. But when we start with that amount, that age, and that doesn't change, and they feel comfortable with that, well, the math does say that you should wait. So if you do live longer, you will receive more lifetime benefits. It's just, again, dollar for dollar, you're going to receive a higher benefit by delaying, and that will add up. The other reason would be to maximize the survivor benefit. So in my previous example, when I mentioned that one of the claiming early strategies was the lower earning spouse claiming early, and the higher earning spouse delaying it, well, that would maximize the survivor benefit by delaying it. And maybe, even delaying it up to age 70, you would maximize that survivor benefit. There is, protection against inflation and longevity, because Social Security currently does have an inflation adjustment every single year, a cost of living increase that's applied. They do the analysis throughout the year, and then in October they make the announcement of what the next year's cost of living increase will be, and it's a function of what the CPI, Consumer Price Index, is in the United States, and so it's widely available. Everyone can track it and kind of determine what it is, and typically last several years it's been higher than average, but it's been in that 2 to 3% range for quite some time. one of the easy reasons to not claim it early and to delay it is if you're still working.
Sure.
So if you're working and you're younger than your full retirement age, so that is, again, the age you receive 100% of your benefit, which for most folks, it's going to be 67. If you're 65 and you're still working and you think about claiming Social Security, or if you look at it, you're subject to an earnings limit. So Social Security has a formula that says if you're under your full retirement age and you begin to claim your Social Security benefit, you're going to receive less if your income's over a certain dollar amount. And it's, $2 for every $1 over, I believe it's about $24,000, somewhere in that range.
And you find that out when you file your taxes, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
where this gets shored up.
They catch it when you file your tax return, and then you can, you pay it all back in a lump sum, or you can make a payment plan with the Social Security Administration where they withhold kind of a portion of your future payments to pay that back. But definitely one of the more common reasons to definitely wait. Now, once you hit your full retirement age, there's no earnings limit. So you can claim Social Security and continue to work once you reach your full retirement age. Now, Social Security is still taxable. It is not completely taxable. So what that means is that you will receive a portion of your Social Security tax-free. For a lot of folks that we work with and that are listening to the show, that's about 15%. But depending on what your income is, you might receive 100% of your benefit tax-free. So it's kind of lower income folks are not paying the same tax rate as folks in the higher income brackets.
Matt, you mentioned full retirement age, and people. Social Security Administration has the term FRA for that, full retirement age.
Yeah,
and all these years of doing this, the only relevance I see around the actual full retirement age is that fact of being able to work and not have an earnings limit. I can't see any other thing about the definition of full retirement age that's relevant. Can you? Because look, you take it at 62, or you can wait till 70. You're going to take it somewhere between there. You would never wait to past 70 because it doesn't go up anymore. You can't take it before 62. So then they've identified this target in the middle and called it the full retirement age for certain people of certain birth years. And the only thing about that is it's just a range. The only thing about it is it's a target date that you can keep working and not be penalized, I guess. Is there anything else you can see about the relevance to the FRA?
When I think about it too, it'd be the trustees of the Social Security Administration also are using that age because they're projecting this across the population and saying, okay, if people receive 100% of it at age 67, and we expect the average life expectancy to be 82 or 85 or whatever it is, they're using that full retirement age to make those projections. So if they were to increase it to 68, then that would also change, their projections too. So not necessarily relevant to the individual, more so from what Social Security would use it for their projections.
For modeling. So is that a prediction? I think Matt's gone on the record making a prediction there, Steve, that they're going to move it to 68.
That's right. Yeah. They've asked my opinion. I've given my official opinion to them.
Well, they'll probably move it a lot higher, but we haven't talked about fixes yet to the system, so I won't.
Okay. We'll get to that.
That's right.
Definitely some things to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, other reasons people delay is, well, if they have other sources of income, maybe they're working part-time, they have investments that they're living off of. And then lastly, tax planning as well, because like what we look at is, okay, let's look at all your sources of income. And if you're within a certain tax bracket, a Roth conversion can make a lot of sense. Well, if Social Security is using up some of your tax bracket, that could be a lower Roth conversion in those scenarios. So, just something that, again, that we're aware of and put in our analysis, our tax planning analysis on what income sources people have, especially when they have after tax assets, because those aren't necessarily taxed as ordinary income like IRA distributions are. So you can live off that and be in a low tax bracket, allowing a large Roth conversion based on your IRA balance. So definitely tax planning moves can be. That's probably the most common reason, besides the fact that you do receive more money, and people tend to be confident that they're going to live longer. Again, no one knows, but when we start with 92 and 94 as our estimated date of death, most people are pretty comfortable using that. Like, again, it's not a common thing for people to just say, nope, that's not even close. I mean, it does happen. People do say, I don't think that's going to happen, but they'd prefer at least to start there and then see what happens.
Now, Matt, a moment ago, you mentioned that if you have earned income while you're taking Social Security, that your tax-free Social Security might be reduced $2 for every $1 of income, or $1 for every $2 of income, whatever. Do you ever get that back, or is that money lost that you don't get?
Yeah, when you pay that, that's considered a penalty for claiming early and earning too much money. So you don't get that back. Now, they would recalculate. So every year you work, they print it out, or it's online now. You can ask for a printout. And actually, that article mentioned you can request a certified copy of your earnings history for $100, which people are doing now because they're afraid that the computers, the system the data might get lost at some point. So they want to have a backup, which nothing wrong with that. But your earnings history is available online, ssa.gov. You can go there and set up an account if you don't have one already. And if the most recent year you work is higher than any of your previous 35 highest years, that would, increase your benefit because they'll recalculate it. So in a year where you might have claimed Social Security early and made too much money, they're still going to use the total earned income to as part of your earnings history. So, I mean, again, you don't get the money back, but it doesn't necessarily penalize you from that standpoint, which isn't necessarily a big needle mover. So,
right.
Now, when it comes to the trust funds, because I think that's the biggest reason. I mean, people are afraid that, okay, it's not going to be there, or there's going to be significant changes in the future. So I'd rather just get something now and maybe I'd be grandfathered in. So here's, this is from the annual report that the Social Security Administration publishes, the trustees of the trust fund, and they use 75-year projections because they don't know what the population is going to look like that, past that. And they don't want to make projections past that because there's just going to be too many variables that they're going to have to account for that they're just, unsure of. So this was as of the end of 2023. The new report will come out sometime in May of 2025. But the projected trust fund reserve will be depleted in 2035. Continuing income, so that is just inflows from the current workforce, will be sufficient to pay 83% of the projected program outflows. And then in 2098, it would decline to 73%. So, in a simplistic way, basically saying that number used to be higher too, by the way. But in 2035, projected payroll tax, so the current workforce would pay without any changes, would just pay in 83% of what they project to be the outflows. So that could mean, and we look at this and we talk to clients about this, is a worst case scenario a 17% across the board haircut. Everyone just gets 17% less. It's possible, and we can model that in. Let's just say it happens, or 20% or 25%. We can put any number in there and determine how dependent is your financial plan on Social Security. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, people want to know. I mean, someone who's close to retirement, there's not necessarily a whole lot you could do about it if your plan is highly dependent upon Social Security, besides just continuing to work. Whereas if you're young and you don't want to account for Social Security, well, great. We can tell you exactly how much you need to save to offset that and just not be dependent upon it if it happens to not be there. But again, I think it's unlikely for it to just go away. Right now, monthly the Social Security program is providing monthly benefits, or at least at the end of 2023, to 67.1 million people. And then and during 2023, an estimated 183 million workers had earnings covered by Social Security. So you can see why it gets a lot of attention, is because that's a lot of people.
Yes, it is.
That are receiving. I mean, you're talking 67 million people receiving it, and then 183 million people are paying it. Workers are basically paying into it or have paid into it. I mean, you don't have to currently be working to be covered, but again, that's a significant portion of the population that is kind of aware of what's going on with Social Security.
Yeah. And so I think you've got a good point there, that there's not going to be this big cliff where all of a sudden 1 year it goes bankrupt and people's benefits are going to be cut dramatically. Like you say, maybe it's 13%, 17%, some number, which is still significant. But the reality is, my personal opinion is, I think that's unlikely that we're going to see that happen, because when push comes to shove, the government is really not going to cut those kinds of benefits, particularly people that are already receiving a level of benefits. I would think it'd be highly unlikely that Congress would cut benefits to existing people. And then also the last time, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the last time there was a major change to Social Security was back in the early to mid 80s.
Yep.
When they increased the retirement age up to 67. And that was like decades in the making, in the sense that once they made the decision that we were going to raise the age, it was way, way out into the future before you were impacted. So you had a long runway to plan for that. So any changes that they might do today to either increasing the retirement age or reducing benefits, my guess is it would be similar in that it won't take effect for a long time into the future. So no one's really going to be blindsided by not being able to rely on Social Security going forward. So that's sort of my opinion. Yeah. Do you guys agree with that, or
well, the voters,
something here?
The voters that it affected weren't born yet, or weren't paying attention yet.
Yeah, or just entering the workforce and didn't care.
Yeah.
And that's highly likely, because again, Congress, they do want to get reelected, and making a significant change in Social Security that's going to impact, and for a lot of people, that might be the only issue that they care about when they vote is Social Security and what happens to it. Or at least if it's, a candidate is adamant that it's got to change and going to go away, then, I don't think a lot of people are going to vote for those candidates. Again, Congress can pass something. Now, this is an issue or an item on, in Congress that does require a supermajority. So it's not just an executive order, can't just change Social Security. It's not a simple majority. So, it's like 2/3 of Congress has to agree, which is a significant amount. That's very difficult to get that many people to agree to something. But at some point they are going to have to do something. And, when you mentioned, Steve, mid to early 80s, yeah, that's correct. The other thing they did at that time, they also instituted the tax on Social Security. So prior to that, Social Security was completely tax-free. They then said, okay, well, if you paid in half via your payroll tax and your employer paid the other half of the payroll tax, well, then maybe you should pay tax on the portion of your employer's benefit that they paid for you, because you weren't necessarily taxed on that yet. So that's kind of how they justified it.
Now, at that point, they couldn't bring themselves to taxing you on your own money that you had put aside as a tax in the first place, right? Yeah. So at that point, people could say, well, FICA tax, okay, what Matt just said is right. Company paid half. Okay, they're going to tax me on half.
Yeah.
But certainly they would never tax me on my own money that they withheld as a tax in the first place when they took it from me. That would never happen, right, Matt?
Well, so they started, so they have a formula, and it's the exact same formula as was created in the 80s, this provisional income formula. So the numbers haven't inflated at all. So the numbers are pretty low relative to what they were back then. When you kind of bring inflation back into the picture. And this formula said if your income's under a certain dollar amount, whether you're married or single, you receive it 100% tax-free. Okay. And it's about $32,000 if you're married, and it's $25,000 if you're single. And it's all of your adjusted gross income plus half your Social Security. It's not overly complex, but it's not the simplest thing to understand. And then as your income moves higher, so for a married couple from 32,000 to about 44,000, I think is where that upper end is. You move from 0% to 50% of it counting as income. So it's not 50% tax, but 50% of it counts towards your taxable income. And then once you get over that upper threshold, then that's where they said, well, too bad. We're going to only give you 15% tax free. 85% of it counts as income. So,
oh boy. So some of the money that you paid
Yeah.
in tax gets
Taxed again.
gets
Yeah.
taxed when you get it back. Interesting. Well, anyway, hey, it fixed the system.
It's
So
how the system works.
if
Yeah.
that's what we have to do again, then that's what we'll have to do again. Something.
Well, and my point too with that is the trust funds at that point had 6 months until they were completely exhausted. So they waited to the last minute. And this part of the reason why I think they're probably going to wait to the last minute in this situation, because the fixes aren't, there's always going to be people that are upset about them. It's just, you can't keep everyone happy. Some of the potential fixes would be increasing full retirement age, increasing, even the age you can receive your delayed credits, like maybe from 70, maybe move it up to 75. So capping the cost of living increase, capping it at no more than 2% or 3% if it happens to be higher than that. And there's a combination of all of these things that they could do too. They can increase the payroll tax. That's been discussed. So, again, a lot of different variations that can come into play. And one thing too, I mean, the current administration, when they were campaigning, and actually all the other candidate too at the time, Harris and Trump, they were both saying no tax on Social Security.
Right.
And, the while that sounds great, the downside is it would exhaust the trust funds sooner, because part of the Social Security tax is what goes into the trust funds to help support them. So that would exhaust them a few years sooner based on some analysis that I've seen. If they were to completely get rid of it. Yeah, something like that. That was kind of what I saw at the time. And, so it's like, well, that probably isn't going to pass because it's just going to make Congress have to deal with it sooner. What I could see is where they do change this provisional income calculation that I mentioned, where that's the formula that determines how much of your Social Security counts as income.
Of course.
And those numbers haven't changed. And they might, I could see them changing that. So maybe more people are receiving Social Security tax free, but then they're maybe instituting a surcharge for people that have higher incomes too. So if you have a lot of money and if you're earning high amounts of income in retirement, it might be like your Medicare, where you pay more for your Medicare. That exists today. Your Social Security, you might get a surcharge applied to it, which again is just another word for a tax that's over and above the standard, income tax that currently exists. So
a tariff. Maybe it's a tariff on Social Security.
Could be, yes.
We're talking about other words for taxes. No. So, what to your point there, when you talk about when the two candidates, like you mentioned, and now, it's being talked about still today, no tax on Social Security. Well, something around half of the U.S. already pays no tax on Social Security. So that's already in place.
Yeah.
So like you said, that provisional income limit, all they'd have to do is ratchet that up to some extent, still hit people making over 250,000 or some number like that. And most people in retirement, and most people would pay no tax on Social Security. Not all, but most. Just we're given variations here of how they could stretch this thing out. And again, like you said, Steve, you brought it up. Then Matt even pointed it even clearer. They waited till 3 to 6 months before the trust fund was out to make pivots. So based on what we're talking about today, we're an eternity away from them making any changes.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe. Right. The other thing they've never changed, which is interesting, is the early age, the 62.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it. In my book, I wrote about the first person that took Social Security, and you've talked about it too, Matt, on the show.
Ida Mae Fuller.
Ida Mae Fuller. She beat the system, didn't she?
Yeah,
Didn't
she paid in
beat
like
the system?
$200 and lived, I think, to 100.
Yeah, she sure certainly beat the system, which set the stage for the system needing help.
Yeah.
And their calculations need to be relooked at. But it started way back when life expectancy wasn't a whole lot more than 62. Now I don't have it right in front of me here, but now life expectancies are so much longer, and the early retirement date is 62, or early date to take it. So it makes you wonder if they'll adjust that out a little bit farther as well.
Yeah, or maybe it's a bigger decrease at 62 than it is currently.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a couple other things they could do. I'd love to get your guys' take on this as well. One is, I think they call it means testing the benefits, which means if you're a really high income, perhaps high net worth person, then your Social Security benefits might be reduced, thinking that, well, you're wealthy, so you don't need it. So that's one way to sort of tax the rich or raise taxes on the rich by reducing the benefits for Social Security. So that would be one. Another one is the way you pay taxes today on Social Security is like, what is it? 6.2% of your wages are pulled out and go into Social Security, but that maxes out at like $176,000 of income. So there's also thinking that maybe they increase that cap. So instead of stopping the Social Security taxes coming out once you hit 176,000 of income, maybe they raise that. Maybe there's no ceiling. And so you could be paying, a whole bunch more. And again, that would sort of be a bit of a tax on higher income earners. Anyone above 176,000 would have to continue to pay taxes on. So that's, there's a couple other things. So I think there's lots of levers here. But to your point, I don't think any of these levers are going to be pulled for years because we're not running into an issue until 2020, 2032, 2033, 34, 35, somewhere in the early 2030s is when they probably will actually get around to addressing this.
That's right.
All right. So what's the moral of the story here when it comes to fear mongering around Social Security?
Yeah, the key is, I mean, it's okay to be concerned about it. Nothing wrong with that. It's just let's understand our options and let's just get educated about them. And what are the trade-offs? I mean, again, no one knows the day to death. So there's not hey, this is, in some cases, maybe you could say that's a bad decision, where someone is earning too much and they want to claim it early. It's like, you're going to just pay it all back in penalties anyway. Like that would be a bad decision. But, beyond that, if you're retired, again, no one knows for certain how long you're going to live. So it's just, let's just put some numbers down and look at the estimates and come up with the analysis. And you can always, if you decide to delay today, every single month you delay, you get an increase and you can turn it on. So it's not like you have to wait an entire year or wait to your birthday. It's just 6 months from now, you can turn it on. It's always an option once you're eligible to turn it on.
That's right. And Matt, we'd mentioned in the past, I know those rules changed. I said earlier, irrevocable decisions mostly. And by mostly, I meant, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if you did turn it on and then you came and saw us and realized you shouldn't have turned it on within the first year, believe it still that you could stop it and pay it back and
That's
act
correct.
as if it hasn't happened as long as it's in the first year. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the first 12 months, you can pay it back.
Yeah. So, Steve, the moral of the story, as you asked about the headlines and the fear mongering, right? The moral of the story for Social Security, the moral of the story is the same as for Social Security as it is for any aspect of someone's overall financial plan. And that could be whether it's the Medicare system falling on hard times, or that could be going through market volatility. It could be going through how things are titled. You see headlines around that are from different resources, magazines, and things trying to scare people into certain actions or newsletters and finding the secrets about how things work. And these things are cybersecurity. There's so many things out there that create headlines and that create fear. So the key to this is making sure that someone has sat down. And I always say, with a competent professional team that are fiduciaries that have their best interest in mind, and have their best interests first, and get aware and truthful about where they stand. So you have an accurate picture of your assets, everything you own, everything you owe, if anything, what your objectives are with your resources over the next, today and all the way out into the future, how you'd like to see things play out. Really take a close look at it, the people you want to make sure are taken care of, the institutions you want to make sure are taken care of, and living the inspired, passionate life that we all deserve after working so hard and saving and being good stewards of our resources. And then these decisions, they're not knee-jerk. We're not reacting to the headlines. We're not reacting to what we heard maybe at the barbershop, as a cliche to say, or from somebody that maybe isn't as educated or informed. And certainly no one except your fiduciary advisor or someone you've trusted would know your situation as well as you do and your advisor. So no information from outside sources acting on you can be as important as you taking control of your own personal financial situation and having a financial plan in place. So where you think it out, you write it down, you get it out of your head. I say write it down. They're on computers today, but we get it in writing. We look at it. We own it. We celebrate it. We look forward to it. We get excited about it. And then we update it every 6 months to a year. And then all these other decisions, they have decision trees around them that answer themselves. The right answers come in ranges of solutions, and it just takes the guesswork out and the emotion out of it, which I would say is so key and so important when we do these things. And also if you have a spouse or partner, doing it alongside them as well, so both parties are on the same page. So, I'm passionate about this stuff, Steve, and helping people make really smart and prudent decisions for themselves and their families, and just being educated and informed and empowered. So in fact, that's why we do the program. We're in our 10th year here of doing it. And this has not been our first episode on Social Security. And the reason why is because it keeps coming up. And we said that when you started the program, we said it on our very first episode, we said 240 some episodes ago, we said we're going to give folks a look behind the curtain of what we see in a successful, thriving, growing, experienced financial advisory practice, retirement planning, fiduciary practice. And that's exactly what we do. We bring topics to this program that we're seeing day in and day out from Matt and I and our advisors. So hopefully it's helpful to kind of get a refresh on our thinking about the Social Security system here.
It certainly is. And the passion is definitely coming through from both of you. So I appreciate that. And for each of you listening today, please make sure that if you want to get all the details here of this episode and all the other ones, you can go to keenwealthadvisors.com. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and make sure that you tell all your friends and colleagues about the show, as we'd love for them to be able to hear what we're talking about as well. And we appreciate all your help in that area. So guys, we'll wrap it there. Thanks again for another great episode of Keen on Retirement.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Steve.
The Steve Sandusky Advisor Network and Belay Advisor are not affiliated with Keen Wealth Advisors. Opinions expressed by Steve are his own and not necessarily the opinions of Keen Wealth Advisors. Keen Wealth Advisors is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Keen Wealth Advisors and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. The contents of this podcast are intended for the residents of the United States of America. No advice may be rendered by Keen Wealth Advisors unless a client service agreement is in place. This program is intended for informational purposes only and should not be construed as advice on or a recommendation of any particular investment, strategy, or as tax or legal advice for your specific situation. Keen Wealth Advisors is not a tax or legal advisor. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your licensed professional prior to investing. Information in this program was compiled from sources believed to be reliable. Due to the constant state of data changing, we do not guarantee the timeliness or the accuracy of the information provided. Our views or opinions at the time you are listening to the podcast may be different than they were when the podcast was recorded. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any prices that are referenced or market forecasts are as of the date stated and are not necessarily our opinions moving forward. As always, please remember, Investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. This podcast is not allowed to be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced without permission from Keen Wealth Advisors.